Last Sunday was a wonderful day. On the day the church celebrated together the feast of the baptism of Christ, here at St. James, we also celebrated 5 wonderful baptisms. And today, believe it or not, the celebration goes on. But while last week was all about baptism, today I want to talk about another sacramental rite and celebration. One you could probably guess from our gospel reading: marriage. Though I'm sorry to say we won't have any weddings during today's service. We'll save that for another time. Like baptisms, I absolutely love weddings. As I often say at most weddings I officiate, and when I meet with couples preparing for weddings, to witness and to officiate a marriage is one of my favorite parts of being a priest. And whatever it looks like, no matter where it is, even what kinds of traditions surround it, all weddings share the fact that they are about the joining together of 2 people in love, and not just any love, but the love of God. And that is always worth taking some time to just pause, to stop everything, and to celebrate. In whatever manner and however long it might be. Like most, if not all of you, I've seen all kinds of weddings, from small to large, formal to casual, from in a church to in a garden, at the beach or in the mountains, at a big venue, or even in a living room. I'd say I've seen it all, but you all know as soon as you say that, it's just not true. You see something else. But of all the weddings and receptions and dinners and brunches and welcome parties that I've witnessed or been a part of, none of them compared to the wedding festivities I witnessed a few years ago. When I was visiting the Holy Land, I was a guest at St. George's College in Jerusalem. Some of you I know have been there and stayed yourselves. And it just so happened that during my stay, a close family member of the Archbishop of Jerusalem was getting married. His granddaughter, if my memory serves right. So this was, of course, a really big deal. And I had heard that there would be a big celebration with some festivities on the grounds of the cathedral and the college, as you might expect. And let me tell you, the night that this celebration happened, let's just say it's a good thing I wasn't tired. As I looked down that evening from my balcony on the festivities that were happening in the courtyard below me, it was clear they knew how to party. They had a really good time. What I didn't expect was that this celebration, the party that I was witnessing, was not just one day, nor was it 2 days, but it was a multi-day affair. One celebration after another, each with its own particular purpose and flavor, because that is the tradition of those people. It is the tradition of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian Anglican Christians, and yes, the Anglican Archbishop of Jerusalem at the time. For them, weddings are a big deal, and they celebrate them as such, just as those in that region did generations before them, and just like we hear in today's gospel passage. Today, we take a brief pause from the Gospel of Luke to hear the story of the wedding at Cana in Galilee in the Gospel of John. The only gospel in which this story is found, and the first of the signs that we hear in John, signs of who Jesus really is. This passage comes up in the lectionary today, but this is it. It's once every 3 years. Though if you've attended weddings in the Episcopal Church or other similar tradition recently, you will have heard it referenced every time in the opening address to the congregation. And as we just heard, Jesus, Mary, and all the disciples were all at this wedding celebration. We don't know all the details. We don't know even who was getting married. We can only say that it was a big deal. Anyone who was anyone was there, including Jesus and Mary and all the disciples and many more. And unlike the wedding receptions and celebrations with which we are so familiar, this one probably looked a lot more like the celebration I witnessed a few years ago in the Holy Land. A celebration that happened not just on one night, not 2 nights, but probably days on end. A true celebration of the couple that involved the whole community. That was the tradition then, as it is now, and how wonderful. This was an important moment. And then, disaster strikes. They run out of wine. Disaster for the couple, the community, and the hosts. But setting aside for just a moment the drama of this, why was it such a big deal, really? I mean, this wasn't exactly a grave situation, as we see with Jesus' other miracles and signs. There was nobody in this story to heal, nobody whose eyes needed to be opened, nobody to feed, lest they go hungry, nobody to raise from the dead, like Lazarus. This was purely and simply a social blunder. You can imagine the embarrassment for the host, the tragedy for the guests, and for the couple, even a sign that perhaps their relationship would not flourish but might run dry. It sounds dramatic, but that's maybe how they felt. And yet, let's be real. It's not as if they hadn't had plenty already. The story implies they had enough. Social faux pas and embarrassment aside, the danger was simply that the party would end. And to this, Mary says, not so fast. She tells Jesus, they have no wine. And it seems that Jesus dismisses her, saying, what concern is that to you and me? My hour has not yet come. For Jesus, it was not yet time for his glory to be fully revealed, but that doesn't mean he couldn't show them a glimpse. Mary tells the servants, do whatever he tells you. Do whatever he tells you. And so Jesus told the servants to fill the stone water jars, each that can hold 20 to 30 gallons. And they filled them to the brim. And then they drew some out. They took it to the steward. And the steward was amazed. The wine was good. He was shocked that the bridegroom had saved the good wine for last. But only the servants knew that it was Jesus who made the wine from water. Only the servants knew that Jesus brought forth the best wine for the party and saved it for last. Only the servants knew where it came from and who was responsible. Only the servants knew, because they were the ones who did what Jesus had told them and delivered the miracle. And so they believed in him. Meanwhile, my guess is that everyone else drank the new wine, and the party went on. Everyone blissfully ignorant, but full of joy. There are many elements of this passage that stand out as important, as teachable, as preachable. And because this comes up once every 3 years, I want to say so much, but I will focus today on Mary's words. Do whatever he tells you. To be clear, it was Jesus who turned the water into wine, a sign of his glory, not the servants or Mary or even ours. But in doing what Jesus told them to do, the servants were instruments of delivering God's abundance to others. What if Mary's words are directed to us? What if we do whatever he tells us? What is it that God is telling us to do? Tomorrow is the celebration of Martin Luther King Jr., a man who we as a church lift up as a saint for doing what he believed God was telling him to do, even if it meant that doing so would cost him his life, which we know it did. And he did so by simply using the gifts that he had been given. As a pastor, a powerful orator, a gifted writer, a theologian, to advocate for true justice and freedom for the most marginalized in our country. Everything he did, he saw as following God's call and commandments, most especially to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves. What then does it mean for us to do whatever God tells us, even when we don't like being told what to do? It means that we do exactly what Martin Luther King Jr. did. No, maybe not exactly in the same way, but like the servants at the wedding who were there at the right time and in the right place with a certain task and certain gifts. We, in our time and in our place, simply use our unique gifts and talents and resources to show even just a glimpse of God's glory and to be a part of delivering God's abundance. As we hear today in the passage from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services, but the same Lord. And there are varieties of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. Whatever your spiritual gift, be it wisdom or knowledge, healings or miracles, prophecy or discernment, speaking in tongues or interpretation of tongues, or things not listed in the list. We do with what God has given us to do what God calls us, to help bring forth God's abundance, and thereby give reason for all to celebrate. And while not everyone may see and know that God deserves the credit, you will know that God was the one who did the true miracle, and that God is really the true life of the party. So, what if, when it seems like all good things are drying up, that we trust that there is plenty more to drink? What if, even in the moments where it feels like the best is behind us, we trust that the best is actually yet to come, like the good wine saved for last? What if, when we feel powerless, like there's nothing we can do, we listen to Mary's words, and like Martin Luther King Jr. and all of God's servants, we simply just do what Jesus tells us? If so, I hate to tell you, but it means, yes, we do have work to do, but it is good work. The work of being instruments of God's abundance to a world that needs it, that has always needed it, that needs it now and always will. And to show that we always have reason to celebrate. To celebrate that through Christ, God continually gives us more than we can ask or imagine. To celebrate that even through us, God transforms the world, even when we don't know it or see it. And because of what Christ has done, from the first miracle of bringing wine out of water to the miracle of bringing new life from out of death, God gives us such reason to celebrate, not just for one night, not even 2 nights, not 3, not even just a week. This celebration never ends, and the best is yet to come.